I didn't realize the payment failed. It must have been a glitch, a decline charge, maybe, or a billing cycle reset. I only noticed something was wrong when the water from the kitchen faucet slowed to a stop mid-pour. No warning, no message, just nothing. I checked the meter, a blinking red triangle where the balance should have been. My phone was still charging, but the screen had locked. A soft chime kept repeating, "Please update your life access plan." I tried to log in. No signal, no internet, no notifications. Just a blank interface and a quiet reminder that essential services required an active subscription. I stood there for a while, holding the empty glass, listening to the refrigerator power down. It didn't feel real until the lights dimmed. That was the point I remembered the email, the one I ignored 2 weeks ago. A subject line I didn't bother reading. Important changes to your access tier. Apparently, I'd missed the update. Essential services, water, power, food credits, transport, healthcare, they weren't guaranteed anymore. Not unless you were Tier 3 or higher. And after the last restructuring, my employer dropped us all to Tier 2B. Auto-renewal required manual confirmation, and I hadn't confirmed. That's all it took. I opened the cabinet. No physical food. My kitchen was optimized for drone delivery. I reached for the wall console. Emergency provisioning. The screen flashed grey. Account inactive. Emergency requests limited to Tier 4+. I tried calling support. The call wouldn't connect. I checked the time. Still early. Maybe it was a glitch. Maybe it was just me. I opened the door to my unit. The hallway lights were dimmer than usual, flickering slightly. A man in a maintenance vest walked past, his boots echoing in the quiet. He didn't look at me. "Excuse me," I said. "Do you know if there's an outage?" He paused. His eyes scanned me. Something on his wrist blinked yellow. "Check your tier," he muttered, and kept walking. I stepped outside. The elevator didn't recognize my badge. I took the stairs. 18 floors. Halfway down, the emergency lights cut out. By the time I reached the lobby, I was sweating, breathing hard. The scanner at the exit door blinked red. A message appeared above it. Mobility services suspended until renewal. I pressed my palm to the glass. Nothing. No override. I was sealed in. I sat down on the bench by the mail drop. Someone else was already there. An older woman, holding a dead phone in both hands. She didn't look up. "I thought I paid," she whispered. "I thought I had another week." I nodded. Neither of us moved. I stayed in the lobby until morning. At some point, the lights stopped flickering, but the scanner never turned green. The woman beside me had curled up on the bench and fallen asleep, arms wrapped around her knees. A delivery drone hovered outside the glass for a few minutes, scanned the blocked door, then lifted off again. Whatever it was carrying, it wasn't for us. When daylight came, I checked my balance on a public terminal. No ID, no credentials, just a face scan and last 4 digits. It didn't load. A soft tone replaced the interface. "Account access temporarily restricted pending payment verification." I tried the help kiosk in the atrium. The display welcomed me by name, then shifted to a red banner. "Support services are available for premium or emergency tier members. Please upgrade to continue." I laughed, loud enough to echo. The woman beside me flinched. My stomach hurt. I hadn't eaten since yesterday morning. I thought about breaking into one of the vending units, but even those were locked behind tier access. Convenience integration, they called it in the rollout video. I opened the building map. There was one floor still showing full power. Level 1B, secure medical storage. I took the stairs again. My legs shook. The hallway outside the med floor was colder. Emergency lights only. The door was locked, but not by scan, by analog key, probably for safety or liability. I waited until no one was nearby, then jimmied it open with a piece of broken plastic from a wall panel. Inside, refrigerated units, backup power cells, nutrient packs. I didn't steal. I borrowed. One of each. I left the door open when I left. I didn't care. Back upstairs, the woman was gone. A second person sat where she'd been, someone younger, wearing a fitness band. He looked at me like he'd been waiting. He nodded. You too? I sat down slowly. Yeah. He held up his wrist. The band blinked yellow. 3-day grace. I used it up. Now it's just countdown. You tried to renew? He laughed, short. Of course. But the portal said my profile was under manual review. That means no auto-access. Manual by who? He didn't answer. A moment passed. Then he leaned in and whispered, There's a place. Basement level. People who haven't paid in weeks. Some of them found workarounds, legacy ports, old machines not tied to the system. It's not official. But they survive? I looked toward the stairwell. He shrugged. Better than sitting here. I stood. The door behind the scanner still blinked red. But now I knew it wasn't locked. It just didn't open for people like me anymore. The stairwell to the basement was colder. The motion sensors didn't activate. No lights came on. I used my phone screen for light, even though it only held a dim glow, battery throttled by the system when access fell below Tier 3, just enough juice for flashlight mode, just enough to not be useful. Halfway down, the air changed. Drier, older. It smelled like dust and old electricity. I passed a floor labeled B1R, half the letters missing. The next level wasn't labeled at all. The walls here weren't the smooth polymer of the rest of the building. They were concrete, poured decades ago. When I reached the bottom, the hallway bent into a soft curve, a shape not meant to be on any blueprint. I followed it. I started seeing marks, tape on doors, chalk X's, handwritten signs, authorized exit only, or no data here. Then I saw the first person. A woman standing barefoot in front of a vending machine, staring at it like it might speak. She didn't look up, just pressed buttons that didn't respond. Not trying to get food, just touching something that still looked like choice. I passed her quietly. Further in, more people. Quiet voices. A few old monitors rigged to battery packs. One person sat in front of a CRT with static playing, flipping switches that did nothing. Another fed what looked like punch cards into a modified scanner. Nothing happened, but they kept doing it. They weren't trying to escape. They were trying to exist. I stepped through a door marked Archive 0. Inside, a small group sat around a plastic table. A lantern glowed in the center. One man looked up. Middle-aged, heavy lines in his face. Not fear, fatigue. You dropped? He asked. Payment failure, I said. He nodded. Welcome. Someone handed me a ration bar. Expired, but sealed. I ate it without asking. They weren't disconnected, not completely. One woman had a signal reader. It flickered green every few minutes, catching stray bursts from outside systems. Enough to know what we're missing, she said. Another had a laptop with a port no longer supported anywhere above ground. Legacy keyhole, she called it. System doesn't watch this format anymore. Too old, too slow. They used it to print things. Documents, manuals, old PDFs from before everything went smart. Someone had a water pump hooked to a grey water line. It worked, poorly, but it worked. I stayed with them through the night. Didn't speak much, just listened. They talked about the first wave, when subscriptions replaced access. Back when you could still appeal. When customer support had a human face. When being poor didn't mean being invisible. Now you weren't cut off, you were ghosted. We're not off-grid, one man said. We're just below visibility. I asked him how long they'd been here. He said, long enough to know it's not temporary. The woman with the signal reader tapped her screen. A soft tone played. System sweep just passed, she said. Windows open. 5 minutes. I didn't ask what that meant, but everyone stood. We moved fast. No one ran, but there was urgency in the way they moved, like they'd done this before. I followed them down another hallway, narrower this time, lined with disconnected panels and wiring bundled like veins. The air buzzed, low and heavy, like the building itself was breathing through machines no one had maintained. At the end was a door that looked like it belonged to a different century, steel, with a manual lock and no scanner. One of them used a key, a real key. When the door opened, warm air spilled out. It smelled like electricity, coffee, sweat, and dust. A human smell. Inside was a room no larger than a closet, lined with displays. Not the bright, polished kind that populated the surface, but old screens, deep ones, the kind that hummed when powered. A desk sat in the middle with a tower the size of a suitcase. One woman called it the spine. "This still has root access," she said, "before everything went to cloud." I didn't understand. I didn't ask. They connected a wire to my band. Not the band I'd worn, but the one they handed me. A clone of an old Tier 3 ID, repurposed from recovered fragments, spoofed just long enough to run a patch. They said it wouldn't hold, that the system would eventually detect the irregularity, but it would give me a window. A day, maybe two, enough to breathe, maybe file an appeal, maybe vanish somewhere it can't reach. I nodded. They uploaded something. My profile blinked to life on one of the monitors, grey, fragmented, like it had been half deleted and then frozen. It showed my name, my tier, my last verified location, and a warning in red. Subscription voided. Manual flag. Resource abuse. "Who filed that?" I asked. They didn't answer. One man pulled a switch. The room dimmed. My ID reset. The clone activated. "Go!" the woman said. I left through a side tunnel, came out near the freight docks behind the building. No one saw me. The clone held. Above ground, the city buzzed like nothing had changed. Lights pulsed, ads blinked, people moved in rhythm. I scanned into the transit line. The gate opened. A meal print station accepted my order. Nutrients dispensed in a perfect square. Vanilla-flavored compliance. For a few hours, I was real again. But I knew it wouldn't last. That night, I didn't go home. I bought a burner slate, typed a message. "Subscription failed. Access denied." I got out, but only because I became someone else. I left the message in a public feed archive. Maybe someone like me would find it. Someone still watching from the underside. Because survival wasn't about fighting the system. It was about knowing when to disappear.